this article from Lending Tree. Only 20% of Gen Z workers earn enough money to live alone comfortably, and in many metros, it's even worse. It's a long held rule of thumb that you shouldn't spend more than 30% of your income before taxes on housing costs. I want to point that out. I think that is absolutely stupid. That is a stupid idea. I don't like, because when I was looking for apartments, it's like, oh, you need to make 30% of your income before taxes, before, that's how much you need to make before you live here. Like why before taxes? I don't get to play with my taxes. It should be after taxes. That's how much, you know what I mean? Because the college like, oh yeah, because
right?
if I do something, something, I do a job,
Or,
and what is it? Sorry, continue.
oh, I was gonna say, or if I have to calculate it based on before taxes, then I should be able to deduct it from my income when it comes to paying taxes.
Yeah,
Like if businesses are allowed to deduct that stuff, why can't I?
exactly. Yeah, one thing is like, no, like I make 30% more now. I make 30% more if I don't include taxes. I find that stupid. You know what I mean? About 25, thirty
Uh-huh.
percent of my income goes to taxes. That's stupid. So let's get that out of the way. Back to the article. A lending tree analysis of government data shows that only about 1 in 4 Gen Z workers uh, can meet that standard, and in some metros that number falls to 1 in 10. It shouldn't be surprising that Gen Z workers ages 18 to 27 in 2024, the year the data was analyzed, fall short of that standard far more than their older counterparts. Young people typically make less money than older people, and it's certainly nothing new that teens and 20 somethings sometimes need to lean on roommates, partners, even mom and dad for help with housing. Still, our analysis illuminates how tall a task Gen Z faces today if they want to live comfortably on their own instead. Also, we says they defined living alone comfortably as affording a one-bedroom apartment in the area without spending more than 30% of your gross income. While
What
our
area?
uh, again, I think it's an average. I know you don't like averages, but I think it's based on area. I don't know. I didn't read their data. That's just what they said. One bedroom apartment in quote your area unquote without spending more than 30% of your income in gross taxes.
Can
While
I
our
choose what my area is?
while our analysis revealed that most Americans were able to do so, few Gen Zers could say the same. Key findings: just 1 in 4 full time Gen Z workers nationwide earn enough to live alone comfortably, but the share is much lower in large metros. This might help. Across the U.S., living comfortably without financial help from a partner, friend, or relative required earning $52,040 a year across America. Okay, so I guess there's your average, and only 26.9% of Gen Z workers meet that threshold. In Oxnard, California, 9.6%, Miami, 10%, Orlando, Florida, 10.7%. Only about 1 in 10 Gen Z workers make enough to live alone comfortably. First bullet point. Second bullet point: Gen Z full time workers are less than half as likely as workers in older generations to earn enough to live comfortably on their own. That was word kind of weird. In 2024, a majority of Gen Xers, 60%, millennials, 56%, and baby boomers, 55%, earned a comfortable living compared to just 26.9% of Gen Z workers. They addressed that earlier. Older people usually make more money. We'll get into that. Point 4. Nationally, fewer than 1 in 20 full time Gen Z workers earn $100,000 or more, but the share is far higher in select West and Northeastern metros. Oh my god, I can't imagine. Across the U.S., 4.9% of full time Gen Z workers earn at least 100K, compared to nearly 3 in 10, 29.5, in San Jose, California. The highest share among major metros, San Francisco 20.8% and Seattle 15.3%, also rank near the top, while New York, 13%, is the only Northeast metro where more than 1 in 10 Gen Z workers earn six figures. Information and finance offer the clearest path to six figure pay in Gen Z workers. Blah blah. 6.3% of full time Gen Z workers in information earn at least 100K, the highest share of any industry. That's followed by finance, insurance, and real estate, 12.4%, and professional and business services, 11%. Period. By comparison, arts, entertainment, hospitality, and food services, 1.1%, personal and community services, 1.9%, and retail, 2.5% trail far behind. Wait, is it saying that
So
2.5%
what
of
percent of people who work in?
retail?
Yeah,
2.5% of retail workers earn
get me in
100K?
there.
Oh man, what? I didn't make that much at Kroger. Wait a second.
Where are they working?
Where are
Where are
they
they
work?
working?
Yeah, what kind of retail they work in? Probably like Whole Foods, but
And like Orange County or something.
100%. Um, Few full-time Gen Z workers earn enough to live alone comfortably. Our analysis showed that someone needs to earn 52,000 a year to live comfortably and shop at Walmart without financial help from a
Shop at Walmart.
partner, friend, or relative. However, just 26.9% of Gen Z workers earn that much. That's a far smaller number percentage than we see among older Americans. Okay, which we'll get into later. Okay, that's kind. I mean, in my opinion, I know they said we'll get to it later. That's a little bit cheating. I don't entirely disagree with that, but it's like, yeah, this guy who built four businesses and is 55 years old. Of course, he makes more than some dude just getting out of college. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, now granted, that's not always the case for sure. I get that, but it's still kind of.
The
You
more
hope you.
interesting metric would be like comparing it to a similar age.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure. Like
okay,
at
so
this
this is what,
time, this is what. Yeah.
yeah,
Um.
how many baby boomers were in houses, or how many Gen Xers, or how many millennials were in housing at the same age, right? So the same like under 30 demographic.
Yeah, yeah, same thing. I got you. Then count for inflation, blah blah. There are 18 metros in which 20% or fewer of Gen Z workers earn enough to be able to live alone comfortably. More than half of those are in California and Florida. Uh, oh my God, it's a lot of blah blah blah. They work less,
Um,
not work less, like they make less. This article is just repeating over and over again. Okay. Basically, what we're talking about is 30% of Gen Z workers can live alone. Um, so basics here. Economics is the study of scarce resources that have alternative uses, and high rents and high home prices are quote unquote messengers conveying the news that the amount of housing demanded exceeds the amount supplied at current prices. That's nothing new. That's supply and demand. That's basics. So we can talk about different things when it comes to this. One point I was bringing up was that like the Federal Reserve interest rate stuff, when the Federal Reserve makes policies like such as keeping interest rates around zero bound. For example, that happened about between 2020 and 2022, which was around zero to like 2%. This is
mhm.
a habit of creating like quote unquote winners and losers, like where rich people, because interest is low, um, banks are more likely to lend, more people are more likely to borrow. So because more people are willing to buy, assets go up. That's great for rich people. For poor people, not so much. It doesn't mean anything. They can't buy houses, and they still got groceries to buy. They got a DoorDash for a living. Um, like and policies like these have like like these primarily benefit the rich who already own houses, while punishing those who rely on savings. Low interest rates, inflate prices, creates inflation in a way. Again, this is nothing new. Da, da, da. And like what's it called, by keeping interest rates at zero bound for years, like the Fed encourages massive borrowing. I already brought that up. Housing, but that creates housing and apartment values, which makes them go up, and because they go up, tenants can charge more. And if people, you can charge more, people sell their homes for higher prices, which may even like exceed the not may usually exceeds the actual value at the time. Let's see. And this is again, the interest rates kept low. Another thing is like we brought it up. I only thought about this because Gen Z stuff, and it brought up New York. It's like Mondani. He said he's gonna freeze rent, and it's socialism, stupid ideas, like the and because they say we free rent because housing is a quote unquote human right. But just deeming something quote unquote a human right doesn't change the underlying scarcity of it. Like policies that make use price control, like rent control, price control, rent freezing, often make problems worse for people like Gen Z, because it reduces housing. It reduces. We've talked about this already. If rent freezes, people don't move out. They don't upgrade because it costs more as opposed to just staying where they're at. Um, and you stated it last time, was that it discourages construction, because if they're not going to make as much money from building the place, they're not going to build it at all. They're not going to take a cut to build a house when they're not going to make the money from it, or apartment complexes. That's a one thing. That's probably a major reason why like it's kind of hard to at least for Mondani's case. I think I brought up like San Francisco. No, no, yeah, San Francisco, like in the 1930s, something like that. Any thoughts so far?
Hmm. No, I'm with you. Build more housing. I don't know why this is so hard for people to figure out. I know San Francisco's been taking some steps to solve it. I know there's a couple other cities that have been doing it. Texas being sort of the beacon of hope in the build more housing argument. Um, but yeah, it's that simple. It's you ever heard the I don't know if you're chronically online and you spend too much time on Twitter, you're probably familiar with the concept of the fix everything right now button. That's what building more housing is. It's a fix everything right now button. I am of the somewhat conspiratorial opinion that if we were to solve the housing problem in the United States, not only would our economy massively improve, but we would basically stop seeing the political turmoil that we're seeing like right now. There's a I wouldn't say I'm firmly convicted of the fact, but I like to believe that if we were to fix housing, unironically, just about every aspect of American life would improve drastically, and we would suffer basically zero downsides. Like the only people who are going to that's not true. We would suffer one downside and be hearing boomers gripe about the fact that 10 years ago I could have gotten 1.5 million for this thing. Now it's only worth 40K, which is about what I paid for when I bought it. But you should have seen the prices. Okay, I really should have sold then. I really should. It really wasn't fair, Like, why do I get punished for having a good investment? It's like, all right, Grandpa, you keep thinking housing is investment, old man. The home is the other direction. Yeah, that's why we're putting you in the nursing home. It's okay. That's the only downside.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they'll probably go kicking and screaming, fighting it all the way, but
And essentially in 10 years we won't have to hear about it. But
yeah.
yes, that's another thing. It's like again, it conveys that there's not enough housing. You make a good point. More housing, more construction, more people have jobs,
Also,
more people have homes.
don't ever, all right? People try to hit you with like anti-billionaire, anti-corporate propaganda to try to stop people from building housing, and because they'll say stuff, don't ever let anyone convince you of the opinion that I just don't like that BlackRock is building neighborhoods and leasing out the homes. Yeah, you know what? make, well, one, first off, the total amount of corporate owned housing, including apartments in the American housing market, is like less than 5%. It's like 80 plus, 90 plus percent of the entire market is single, like proprietor owned. Like the market is owned by individuals. Like, don't let anyone convince you that like corporations are buying up all the housing. They barely own any of it. And if they're building more housing, all I say is more power to them. I don't care. I don't care if the house I live in is some BlackRock bundled investment thing. You know what that means? It means that an enormous company has a vested interest in making sure that my living situation is up to par. All right. If you've ever heard, there's a people in this vein of conversation. If you've ever lived in a corporate apartment versus a mom and pop apartment, um, the investment that the legal divisions of these groups have in making sure that where you live is up to code is vastly different. Big corporation will throw absurd amounts of money at making sure that your living situation will not get them sued. Mom and pop will ask you to clean the mold out yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just so we're all on the same page, don't ever let anyone try to hit you with some anti-corporate nonsense about not building more housing because, well, what if the corporations control the market? One, they are so far from doing that. And fun fact, the only way they're actually going to get around to doing that is if we don't build more housing. Because you know who's going to buy up all the houses when the boomers die? It's not going to be your broke ass. It's going to be the corporations. So we're
Mm-hmm.
already headed in that direction anyway. One. The only way to stave that off, two, is to let different companies outcompete them in a slightly different market, which is the building housing market, not the buying housing market. Also, housing is an investment, and theoretically, eventually, companies should realize that, hey, this wealth generating asset is a pretty expensive thing, and potentially sell you the house, which I wouldn't bang on, but like, I do not ever let anyone convince you that corporations building housing and driving down the costs of housing in an area just to scalp the market is at all a reasonable or valid argument against building new housing. If anything, we need to support these guys, okay? I will give the Epstein class more of my money if they give me a house, okay?
Okay, so I want your opinion on this. So for
Build
me,
me if you Epstein, it's the Kratos meme. Epstein, build me a villa in Southern California, and my life is yours.
so my thing is like so. No, not my thing, but where I've heard, because I have heard that like the anti-corp, but it's not so much the whole like they're driving housing prices down. I think it's more so like, now granted, I could be wrong, but we're just talking theoreticals here. It's not so much that they're building houses and the prices are going down. It's that they're building houses, but you don't get to own them. They only rent them
Yeah, it's
out.
leasing, but even leased housing, housing of any kind, leased or otherwise, is still good for the market because it's. Have I explained the pull chain effect of housing? Um, the
No.
way housing works is it's like a chain. So on one end you have the rich people, on the other end you have the poor people, and they all live in different kinds of housing. The very end you have like Section 8, and the very top you have like New York penthouse mansions, like crazy expensive housing. If you build and we'll assume that most segments on this chain are pretty saturated, right? We'll assume actually right now they're actually totally saturated, which is the problem. Every segment on the chain is totally saturated. There isn't enough housing to go around. So if you build a new mansion, right, huge multi-million dollar property, or you build a new, New York or LA penthouse, right, multi-million dollar view of the city, blah blah, someone who lived in the step down from that, right? Maybe the not as nice of a penthouse or a mini McMansion in a nice neighborhood, who could have reasonably afforded that, but it was stuck because there was not enough of that market to go around. They'll move up. They'll upgrade because that's what they wanted all along. They just couldn't get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a
Yeah.
demand, but there was no supply. So they'll move in, which will then vacate the nice house that they live in. And guess what? Right behind them on the chain is someone exactly like them, just a little bit less rich. They want to live in that like expensive gated community, but they're in like a less expensive, maybe decent community, and they want to live there, right? They want to live in that thing, but they couldn't because there wasn't the supply. So the demand is there, and they move to fill that demand, right? They move into that neighborhood, right? It's maybe that young, lawyer couple that finally got their, we're finally moving into the nice neighborhood out of wherever we used to live. And then in the sort of like slightly nicer, but maybe not super nice neighborhood, Well, that house just opened up, and there was someone who's living in an apartment, maybe not Section 8 housing, but like an okay apartment, who's waiting to get their first house. So now they have their first house. And well, someone from the Section 8 who maybe didn't reasonably need to be there or finally got their break, well, they can now upgrade to a nicer part of town. And then someone did that Section 8. And it's like one big chain where it doesn't matter where you pull on the chain, it will pull everything underneath it. So you can build as
Okay.
much Section 8 as you want, and that's probably helpful. But you can build this is another thing that people, because the reason the pull chain effect is now is because when people talk about it, like, well, they're building expensive, they're leasing houses. Okay, but someone who lives in an apartment who would want to lease a nice house will move into that house, and then they'll
Mm-hmm.
open up the apartment for someone who didn't previously have the ability to be in that apartment. And around Section 8 is sort of where you get like just the big pool of people who could fit reasonably maybe into anywhere in the chain, as like new potential occupants. But like and then their next argument is always, well, these are always we we need to build cheap housing, and there just isn't, you know, space for all that. It's like, well, you can build housing of any kind, like genuinely, literally any kind of housing helps. You can build mansions, and it will make space for a poor person because the whole chain pulls. Now, it might not be the poor person parentheses you, but it will be some poor person, and if you do it enough. Now, I agree we do have a deficit of like mid-density housing, right? Relatively affordable apartments, but this isn't like a thing that you can only attack by building massive like com block apartment complexes that hold like, 700 people and everyone gets their own small studio like that would help. Like I'm sure if you built some of that, there are plenty of people who one need it and two would rather live in that than some other place because they just don't think of housing as something where you put in a lot of value. Maybe they're early on in their right. You're a Gen Z person. You're like, I really only need a studio because I'm not in my house a lot. I'm at work. I'm out at nights. I come back to go to sleep, and that's it. And then I wake up. I go to work. I stay out all day, and then I come back and I go to sleep. Like build any kind of housing, even if it's leased neighborhoods. There are lots of people who would love to be in a leased neighborhood who are right now either the child of someone relatively wealthy who's still living with their parents or someone who's in an apartment who could reasonably afford something nicer, um, who's been like saving up their nest egg. And for them, this is the next step. Like, build any kind of housing. It doesn't matter if it's leased housing. It doesn't matter if it's rent apartments. It doesn't matter if it's $1 million mansions. Literally everything helps. It's the most. This is like if the listeners can't tell, this is like a huge like pet interest of mine of like just build more housing. It's the silver bullet. It will solve all our problems. And if it doesn't, oh my gosh, we'll be so much closer to solving all our problems. Imagine what it would be like not having to worry about housing when it comes to solving all these other problems.
Yeah, I get that.
And
Uh,
it's why I'm against stuff like rent control and all that stuff, which is antithetical to like the building of more housing.
yeah, yeah. But I think like I think the point that they were thinking was like the whole. No, no, I agree with his sentiment. I just don't think it's as deep as they think. Is like the whole like you will own nothing, you will be happy. The whole BlackRock making
Nothing
houses
can
that
be
you can
happy.
rent, and I'm like
Yes.
you said, like it's less than 5%. I've heard it's even less than one
Mm.
percent of how much they own, and
Being generous.
so it's like at least for them it's like at least there'll be a place you can live while you potentially save up for a house that you can own. Now I think when they think of like, oh, you'll own nothing, you'll be happy, is that like, oh, they'll eventually own 100% houses. I don't think we'll get there. And if we do get there, it won't be for a long time. And even if it's in
Yeah.
within our lifetimes, the way our economy works will probably be a lot different anyways. And now
And
this is kind of personal. So when it comes to like renting, I've heard
shoot.
renting is a pain in the ass cuz like as you stated, like even with like when it comes to like mom and pop stuff, like when it comes to renters, like when my parents moved into a different house, they're
Well,
renting the
mom and
house
pop is
now.
the worst.
Well,
Corporate's what you want.
well, yeah, but even like I said, even then with mom and pop stuff, like you like because there are like
Hmm.
renters laws or whatever, but like the garage wasn't working properly. They had to replace the garage. Not my parents, the renters, uh, and all kinds of
Hmm.
stuff. You know what I mean? It cost a lot of money. I've heard that like with most renters, like one of the reasons why rent control is terrible is because it hurts the renters the most, and they would rather not have the business and let the building, do nothing with the building, than it because it would cost money for them
Hmm.
for all like the repairs, to pay the repairman,
Mm-hmm.
to pay the tax on the property, blah 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 blah. And it's like I understand the concept of like, oh yes, like we build all these houses for rent, we get to keep the houses, but it's like yeah, but those houses will deteriorate. They need to be up to code, and especially because you're a business, like
Mm-hmm.
lawyers would come after you hard. So you have to hire a handyman to do the work, but you can't just hire a normal handyman who just YouTube the video as they're fixing your problem. You want
Mm-hmm.
good handyman, and that's a good portion. Now I'm not saying sorry, I'm not saying BlackRock wouldn't generate a profit from that. I'm just saying it might not be as much because you know what I mean.
Sure.
They still own it. They
Well,
technically
this is
have to take care of it.
yeah.
So
Well,
again,
this is
I
why
continue.
corporations are sort of more preferable to rent from because they have more money to throw at that stuff, right? Mom and pop don't have the same amount of money to throw at their renters, which is why, or their rentees, which is why they're like, oh, hey, my faucet isn't working. Yeah, all you have to do is this, this, and this. Hey, no, I want you to fix my faucet. Well, it works. You just have to do. It's why they like, even though there's renters laws, mom and pop shops are more likely to try to dodge those because it's a much more costly thing for them to fix your garage or to fix, whatever. Because to them, that's like they probably don't have as many tenants, right? They probably have maybe like six tenants, and a tenant needing like a $10,000 garage or whatever it might cost. Um, like it costs like $5,000. That's like 6 months of that person's rent. Like that's a huge bite out of whatever thing they were trying to do. If you're a corporation and you've got like 60 rental buildings, like apartment complexes across like 10 different cities, and one of them needs like a faucet fix or even like a garage thing or their basement floods. I mean, yeah, you're still gonna go through like the corporate, deny, defend, depose, blah 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 blah. But also like, oh my gosh, that's like factored into cost of business. That's a rounding error for
Yeah.
like a company of like that size, right? For a company of BlackRock size, oh, you need a new garage? Sure, we'll send out a guy, or we'll send out like a professional crew, blah blah blah. Because it's less than a rounding error to us. Like we're worth billions of dollars. You think we're gonna like our housing department is worth hundreds of millions? You think we're gonna sweat over you costing us 10K that much? Like, sure, we're gonna fight it a little bit and we're gonna haggle some because we're a business and that's what we do. And if we can get out of spending extra money, we will try. But also, it is just not economically worth our time to try so hard to risk getting sued by you and potentially going from losing $10,000 to $100,000 or some other larger sum of money that still means not as much to us, but is more costly. So we're going to try to keep it down. It's just cheaper for us to not fight you on it and just hand you the thing because who cares? From what I've heard, I've never
Yeah,
rented.
again,
I've never
again, that was kind of
been a
personal.
rentee. That's
I
just what I've heard.
yeah, I've heard things like again, that's kind of personal. I don't know if it's entirely true, but I've heard that renting is a hassle. You do make some money, but it's not like oh, I'm gonna charge them $1,000 over what I pay. It's like you make like $200 or $300 a month after the rent, and but you still gotta pay people to like plumbers, construction, handyman, taxes, stuff like that. So I've heard that it's not much. That's why you need a lot of renter properties to live off. Does that make sense? But again, that's personal. Not entirely sure. But yeah, so Gen Z, that's your answer. Build more stuff. Build more houses. Supply and demand. Basics. Well, yeah, I think we'll call it there. Well, any last
All right.
words?
Um, nope.
All right, sweet. All right, well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.